Hello everyone, Shroomraver here, and today I'm going to be bringing you my kind of post-season summary from Season 2 of Division 1 of the Pokemon Premier League. Yes indeed, now you know it's been a while since the season proper ended, but I wanted to leave this kind of summary video until the final game of the season, the Community Shieldon game, had been played, just as a sort of overarching summary of exactly how the season went. Looking at the draft, seeing how the Mons did, how the games went as a whole, and the season, you know. So, as you are probably aware, we did manage to win Division 2 this season. Sorry, Division 1 this season, which was absolutely fantastic. I was so happy that we managed to win it. And to cap that off, we also managed to take the Community Shieldon game, so we did the double. I'm so stoked that we managed to. It's been a wonderful season. And, you know, as we went through, the pressure started mounting, because at one point we were 7-0, which was huge, and I never expected to be in that position. But the pressure was on. People were sort of saying, is this going to be the flawless season? Is it going to be an 11-0 sweep? And the pressure sort of mounted, and we lost a couple of games on the bounce, and it was that sense of, oh no, he's choked it away, he's thrown it away. Do manage to come back at the end and take the last two games and give ourselves that 9-2 record and take it, get into the Community Shieldon game and win that as well. So it's been a wonderful season, like more than I could ever have hoped for. So what I want to do is go over the Mons that we drafted and sort of see how they did and how I felt about it. So first up, of course, we have Victini. Victini was the first Mon I drafted, and Little Dun put in a big old performance. Playing in most of the games, you know, played in 9 games. 10 and 4 was the final sort of KOs for and against, with a differential +6, as you can see. And, you know, Victini had a bit of a slow start to the season. First couple of games it went 0-2, and people were saying, what are you doing? This is Victini, you should be way up there in the echelons with all the rest in the sort of top 10 kind of deal. And I was like right down the bottom with Victini. I think it was last at one point. But, you know, Victini managed to pick itself up. Got a KO in the third game, and then it was mid-season that Victini really came through with some big performances. But it was always kind of there, trying to put in a solid showing, and finished up 7th in the MVP race, which was fantastic. Really happy with it. You know, Victini was able to show exactly why it's considered to be such a threat. It's often been said that Victini is the best Mon in the format. Now, I'm not going to be agreeing with that anymore. I used to think so. I've kind of come around to the ways of thinking that there are certain Mons that are a little bit better. It's one of the best by a long shot, but I don't think it's the best anymore. I think it may have used to be, but people are sort of seeing how you can play around it. But, you know, Victini is still a massive threat. Whenever it was in, there was the worry, because that V-Crate is nothing to mess with. So, yeah, Victini coming through for me in a big way with a lot of games. As I say, it played sort of joint most games of any of my squads. So a good showing by Victini. I was really happy with it. And would I pick it again? Given the chance, absolutely. You know, I going into Season 3, I don't want to be picking Mons that I've used before necessarily. The beauty of this kind of format is you can try out so many different Mons. Even if you've seen someone else use it, you can say, oh, that worked well, maybe I want to get that. And I want to sort of move away from picking the same Mons as I've used before. But, you know, if I got the chance, I'd certainly use Victini again. It's a huge player, and it's been fantastic for me. As I say, 7th in the MVP race, great stuff. So, who was next on my list? Well, if I can try and sort of get my notes together, we had Emporio. Emporio, Burrow of Cinder, playing in 6 games, won 5, lost 1, as you can see. With 2 KOs for, 5 against, differential of -3. Finishing in that powerful 125th position on the MVP race. Emporio raised a few eyebrows. There were a lot of people saying, like, you know, it's not the best bulky water, you could have picked something better, you should have picked something better. And I explained my reasonings behind it. I wanted the typing. And, you know, 2 and 5... For a Mon that I did end up using mostly defensively, I think is fair. It did a very good job with hazard control. That was what I mainly wanted to use it for, and what I ended up using it for mostly was indeed that hazard control. I did run it offensively maybe once, potentially twice or so, not often. But when I did, it put in work. Against Jack, it managed to do a decent amount, and was MVP in that game. So, you know, it did what I needed it to most of the time. It was fairly solid without being spectacular. You know, if given the chance, would I pick it again? Chris, if he's watching this, would be happy to know, no, I won't pick it again. I wouldn't want to use Emporio again. I'm more aware of its drawbacks than I was before. And it needs a lot of solid team support around it. Now, I think I had that kind of support with passive healing. Wish passing was going on a lot. So I was able to use Emporio in conjunction with my clerics and wish passers, and that was fine. But it's got its limitations, and I wouldn't pick it again if given the chance. I'd want to go for something else. But Emporio did well for me, you know, and I'm happy with the performance it put in. So, next up we had Chestnut. Chestnut was a surprise for me. Played in 5 games, won 4, lost 1, with a differential of +1, 5 KOs 4 and 4 against, finishing in 41st on the MVP race. This was a surprise. I didn't think Chestnut would be at a positive differential, let alone being quite so high. And Chestnut was really good. Again, hazard support was excellent. It was able to tank a lot of hits, including some from monsters that it probably shouldn't have been able to. You know, it was a really nice option against, for example, an Excadrill run by RTK, which was packing Aerial Ace, and it managed to take it on very effectively. It was a good wall, it did well, and when I wanted to run a gimmick with an offensive Scarfed set, it put in the finest, getting 2 KOs against what was actually El Sizzle using, El Sizzle using Hino's team. Was a surprise offensive mon, did very well for me. Chestnut, I think, has sort of proven itself as a round 3 pick. I think it's worthy of being there, for sure. I'd use it again if I had to, if given the chance, and it was the only one left of the grass types, not that it would be, but you know, as I say, I don't want to be using the same mons as I already have, but if I had to, and it was down to Chestnut, I would certainly pick it again. I think it's proven itself to be a real threat defensively and offensively, and I'm very proud of what it's done this season. So, 4th up, and we had Umbreon. Now, Umbreon was a mon I thought I'd be bringing a lot more than I did. I only brought it to 3 games. It finished up with 2 and 2. That neutral differential, 62nd on the MVP race. Umbreon, yeah, I thought I'd be using a lot more than I did. As it was, I tended to go for Mega-Audino more than Umbreon as far as that wish passing cleric sort of job went. Because Umbreon, much as it's a great defensive mon and it's fantastic in regular ladder play on Showdown and stuff like that, I don't think it's the best to be going with in league play. It tends to be a massive momentum killer, which is a shame. Momentum is so important in this format. You can't really step off the gas too much, and Umbreon does kind of kill that momentum a fair amount, unless you're packing a cheeky baton pass, and you got to get that right. And it's kind of taunt bait a lot of the time. But when I needed it to, it was very nice team support. It healed up my team and kept them healthy fairly effectively in the final match of the regular season against Shardy. And it really helped facilitate a sweep in one of my best games this season, the one against Ethan. That I think is probably not only my best game of the season, but one of my best games that I've played of Pokemon full stop. Because everything just went right. The gimmick worked, the safe stuff worked, Umbreon worked. Passing a curse into Trick Room Victini, that was beautiful. I loved doing that, and the fact that it worked was brilliant. But Umbreon was pretty clutch whenever it did appear. I wouldn't pick it again though, simply because of that fact that it is kind of a momentum killer. But it did a good job, and I'm happy with what it did when it did appear. So, 5th pick, I went with Miss Magus, of course. Miss Magus. This is difficult for me, because Miss Magus, I feel I let down Miss Magus. Miss Magus didn't let me down. Played in 6 games, 5 of those were victories, finishing up with 3 and 6 and a -3 differential, 124 from the MVP race. Miss Magus, I think, started the season fairly strongly, and it kind of coincides with the fact that early in the season I was using it in a much more usual, normal offensive role. First time Scarfed, second time Setup, and in its first 3 games, it went 3 and 3. The third game, of course, being against Ethan, that dedicated suicide gimmick, where it took down Clefable along with itself. So those games, it worked. And I only bought it twice, I think I only bought it 3 times more, actually, in the regular season. And every time I was kind of obsessed with using these gimmicky sets, which are not what Miss Magus does best. And it failed. I failed. So I think Miss Magus has this kind of still untapped potential that in better hands and used better than I did, it could be a real threat. it kind of rectified itself in the Community Shield, and as you can see down in the bottom left there, went 1-1 in, again, a much more normal, standard offensive role with Sash lead, and it did well there, and I was happy with it, and it kind of, you know, redeemed itself a little bit. But would I pick it again? I'd like to try it again, you know, to try and get more out of it, because I think it has still more potential that could be used and could be explored better than I did. So yeah, Miss Magus, I let Miss Magus down. It's still got more potential. I'd pick it again if I could, but I'll try not to, as I say, to move away from that. So next up we had Thundurus Incarnate. Again, came to 9 games, so one of my most used mons. Finished up with 6-6 with that 0 differential, finishing in 53rd in the MVP race. Didn't make an appearance in the Community Shieldon, even though it was on the team. Thundurus, much like Zapdos last season, a good mon, a solid mon, pretty much always did what I wanted it to, without ever being massively spectacular. Often it went 1-1, maybe it got a couple of KOs here and there, was used in both those losing games, and I let it down, certainly in the one against Jack. That was my bad, I played it very badly. But other than that, Thundurus has been brilliant. Having that safety net of Prankster Thunderwave I didn't even use it that much, but it was just nice to have the option, you know? It was always nice to have that safety net in the back of my mind, thinking I can always do that if something's out of control. And that's what Thundurus does very well. Bohemian put in a nice shift this season. You know, 6-6 is a fine performance from an offensive mon that can be a bit tricksy. It was never able to do any kind of real proper setup sweeping. But again, I had that option to go with, and I was happy with Thundurus. I was torn as to what kind of offensive electric type I wanted. I'm really glad I picked up Thundurus. I was weighing up the likes of Raikou and various others. I'm glad I went with Thundurus. I think it was the best option, and it's good in the format. It really is. I would highly recommend using it again. If it wasn't for not wanting to use the same mons, I'd pick it again in a heartbeat. It was really good for me. So next up, well, what do I say about Tyrantrum? Oh my goodness. I don't think anyone expected it to do as well as it did. Played in 6 games, all of them victorious, and it went 17-1, finishing number 1 in the MVP race, and coming into the Community Shield on performance, taking a 1-1 game there. Would have been more if it hadn't finally missed a head smash, but Blue Lines the Tyrantrum was so good. Every single role I brought it in, it did its job. When I brought it in a late game sweeping role, it got kills on kills. When I brought it in a defensive role, it put the team on its back. Again, against Ethan, it was just an annoyance. I brought it in another defensive role against Colton. It didn't even do what it was meant for, but it still did a defensive job. It could punch holes, it could late game sweep. It just did so well. And for a mon that I picked up for 8 million, it was an absolute bargain of the season. I can't wax lyrical enough about how good Tyrantrum is and how good it was this season. And this is a mon, I don't even care, I'd pick it up again. Without a shadow of a doubt, I would pick up Tyrantrum again, because it's so good. It's going to be going up in price, I can tell you that. It was 8 million this season. It will not be 8 million next season, I can absolutely guarantee you that. It's one of those mons, you see these mons come out in draft format that are relatively low tier as far as tiers go, and they put in a massive performance here. In the GBA, we've seen it done with Hariyama, who put in a really nice showing this season for Alex, Swansea Baynet. And I like the sort of having these mons on my team that aren't necessarily expected to do as well as they did. Last season it was Uxie, this season it's been Tyrantrum, and another one that we'll come on to later. But Tyrantrum, 17-1 for the season, a differential of +16. Coming in first in the MVP race, it's just been easily, without a shadow of a doubt, my best one on my team. And I would pick it again like that. So, that's Tyrantrum. Next up, we had Sandslash. Now, Sandslash came to 5 games, 4 of them victorious, and it went 0-5 in the season, finishing up 140th, my lowest performing one as far as differential went, and again in the Community Shieldon it went 0-1. Now, I am very much of the opinion that the stats do not tell the whole story for Sandslash. Sandslash put in a really solid showing, and it's testament to its performances that it went 0-5, but at the end of the season it went up in price from what it cost before. Because Sandslash, as far as hazard control went, was outstanding. I often brought it in an Assault Vest role with a different hazard setter, and it was there to tank a hit or two, get off the spin, maybe get a knockoff off, and it always performed so well in that role. The one time when it was on the losing side, that was against Necrostevo, and it wasn't supposed to be too much of a tank, it was more of a semi-offensive one, but I kind of had to adapt to a very tricksy and dangerous Reuniclus, and even then Sandslash did a good job of weakening that. So yeah, 0-5 does not tell the whole story of Sandslash. Sandslash was very solid for a bargain pick for my spinner, hazard setter, knockoff user, and electric immunity. It had a lot of weight on its shoulders, and it really actually stood up pretty well to the rest of the format. So yeah, I'm happy with Sandslash. I think it did a good job. It would never have been my first choice, and it still wouldn't be for what it is. But you know, for what it is, it's pretty good. I'm happy with how Sandslash did. And yeah, it put in a good showing. I really truly believe that. So next on my list is Poliwrath. Poliwrath was the only transfer I made, and it wouldn't be fair to not mention that Furfrou was in. There won't be a slide for Furfrou. I've made one, but I won't include it because it was there for the first 2 games, and I'll trade it out without using it. So you know what? You done good, Furfrou. I do actually have Furfrou's finishing position, and technically it finished 71st in the MVP race. But Poliwrath here, playing in just the 3 games. One of them was victorious, and it went 0-2, finishing 115th in the MVP race. Poliwrath, one of my least used mons, and it's difficult to kind of judge how good Poliwrath can be, because in the first game it really didn't do much. I think it was on the field for a couple of turns, it went for a protect once, and then I got out of there. The other 2 games I was kind of bringing it once as defensive contingency, which it did its job, or it probably would have done better if I'd had more of a chance to. In the second game I wanted to try and use it as a rain sweeper, and much as the issues Ethan had last season with Poliwrath, it's difficult to make that happen. You know, manual weather is a very difficult thing to do. And it takes a very, very skilled trainer to do it well. You know, Ellie did it well once, I think, last season. I wasn't very successful with it this time. I left it too late. So, you know, Cat and Hammer over there, finishing on -2. Again, it can't really tell the full story. I didn't use Poliwrath enough to really judge how good it can fully be and use to the fullest of its potential. And that's just the thing. I've had this history of bringing in water types that aren't what you really want from this kind of format. You want the bulky water, you want the recovery. Over the past 2 seasons I've had Gyarados, Emporio and Poliwrath. They don't get reliable recovery. They're not what you consider bulky water in inverted commas. So they're not really seen as the ones you want particularly. But you know, I think Poliwrath could still do a job on a dedicated rain team. Poliwrath would be very nice. It's a very nice stop to certain prevalent threats in the format, the likes of Weavile. It can really put the sword to. So yeah, it would take a dedicated team to make Poliwrath work, and unfortunately that wasn't the team I had. But you know, I think it could do work on a very certain type of team. Unfortunately, as I say, that wasn't me this season. So with that, we move on to my next pick, and this is one of the ones I'm so proud of. This is Scyther. Lil Sizz, my goodness, what a performance. Picked up for such a little amount of money. I think it was 4 mil, maybe even a bit less, when I picked it up, round 10. And to go 9-4 off 6 games and come in 10th in the MVP race. Really up there, playing with the big boys. You know, Victini's up there, Manaphy's up there. I think it finished above Shaman. And various others who you expect to be up there in the top 10. Scyther's mix and mingling up there with them. And again, Scyther put in a really nice showing for me, whether it be my sweeper or a bulkier with a Violite setup mon. It performed really very well. I was incredibly happy with it. It was a bargain pick, and it came to a lot more games than I thought it would. And that Community Shieldon performance, coming in 4-0, I was really happy on a personal note that for the entire season, it managed to get over 10 KOs. It finished the full season, all games told, 13-4. But you know, regular season performance 9-4, and then he add on to get it to 13 KOs for the entire season. So that was really good. All told, Scyther is a great mon. Again, this is that second one that I was mentioning, the underrated pick that was not expected to do as well as it did. And Scyther, I'd pick it up again if I could. It's not going to be as cheap as it was this season, I can tell you that much for free. Lil Sizz, you know, named after my man Sizz Awesome, but channeling the spirit of the man it is mascot to, the mighty Magnitude. Scyther put in the finest of work this season. I'm overjoyed at how well it did, and yeah, I'd pick it up again if I could. For a budget pick, it put in the work. So that moves us on to the final mon on the team, and that of course was Mega-Audino, the contentious pick, coming to 8 of my games, winning in 6 of them. Went 4-7 for the season with a differential of -3, finishing up 120th on the MVP race. And again, this is not a mon I was expecting to finish with a positive differential. Mostly a defensive mon can be a very potent setup defensive mon as well with the Calm Minds. And I tried that a few times, it never really worked out for me. It was going to work out against RTK. And if it had worked out against RTK, then we would be looking at 9-6 instead of 4-7, but I don't begrudge him that, you know, it doesn't matter in the end, it's fine. Shardino put in a nice shift. It was my go-to Cleric and Wish Passer over Umbreon. I thought I'd be using them fairly equally, often in conjunction. They only came to one of the same games, and that was against Shardy at the end. But yeah, Mega-Audino I'm happy with. It was just a nice annoyance, and it served more of a purpose of trying to waste a move slot on an opponent's Pokemon to try and deal with it. Because, you know, it wasn't the most offensive threat, but it was always kind of there and able to do some work. It did work in a few games, you know, against Rai, it put in a nice shift and was able to just be an annoyance, set up when it could and get a couple of KOs. Yeah, Mega-Audino is another one of those mons. It was 10 million, which is cheap. And the way pricing is going to work is going to be a bit different next season, I can tell you that. And another thing I can definitely promise, Mega-Audino ain't going to be 10 million next season. It's going to be a lot more than that, because it deserves to be a lot more than that. I don't think it went up in price too much this season, within the season, within those price changes that happen every other week. But it's going to be more than 10 mil next season, because it's good, it's better than people think. People are starting to use it, you know, it's been drafted in the GBA, it's been drafted in the Battle Union. People are starting to see the potential of Mega-Audino. It's more of a threat than people think. It's not a joke Mega. You know, when it was revealed and released, everyone was like, this is rubbish. It's not rubbish, it's good. It's better than people think, and it is a threat in its own right. So I'm happy with Mega-Audino. I wouldn't want to pick it again, for a couple of reasons. You know, I want to try out other fairy types, and I'm not entirely sure how much I like Wish Pass, you know. I'll come to that hopefully in just a couple of seconds when we move on from the team. So that was the drafted team, and that's how I think they performed. And overall, I'm very happy with the team I drafted. You know, they put in a massive showing this season. As far as the team went, as I said, this was mainly a sort of team based around Wish Pass as a healing factor. Last season I didn't draft a lot of recovery, and it cost me in a couple of occasions. This time I wanted more, so I went for a few Wish Passes. And having played Wish Pass for a lot of this season, it's not a tactic I'm all that comfortable with, if I'm honest. It's good, but it's not me. And next season I might try and rectify that a little bit. Wish Pass is good, but it's not the only real proper form of healing that you want. I needed it actually for the likes of Emporio, Victini, Tyrantrum, and Sandslash, the likes of those bulkier mons that don't have recovery of their own. It was good with the team that I drafted, but it's still not the kind of tactic I'm the most comfortable using. So overall, I'm happy with how the team performed. It's still not quite me as a player, but it went well, and I'm happy with it. It was a good draft that I didn't get sniped with, and they performed admirably, so it was a good team. Well played, Parasect Germain, this season. I'm happy with the mons I had. As far as the season went, the battles, you know, I was happy with the way most of them went. You know, against Jack, the 2 losses, you know, the one against Jack, he just outplayed me. pretty much. I didn't play too well. The one against Necrostevo, I was really unhappy with how I played. I was disappointed in myself. I just didn't prep well, I didn't play well, I didn't adapt well. It was a total car crash of a game that he deserved to win. The others, you know, I was happy with how it went. Pretty much most of my plans went to plan. Now, it wouldn't be a summation of my season if I didn't mention the presence of luck. I got lucky in several games. A lot of that luck was game-changing. Then there are three that I can think of, real main things, examples of that really helped me out. The third one was against Alex in week 4, and this one wasn't quite as clutch. For those of you who may not have seen that battle or don't remember, it was a matchup of Sandslash versus Skarmory, and I went for a Super Fang with Skarmory and missed, as he went for counter. What that meant was he didn't have enough damage on my Sandslash to the point where Staraptor was at good enough health after its recall damage. So that allowed me to play around it with Scarfed Scyther and get the final ending kills with Victini. Now, we've talked about it, Alex and I, and it's most likely that I would have still been able to clutch the game with Victini. It might have been a 1-0 instead of a 2-0. So, you know, but that was still a big example of how luck can influence a game in a certain way. Then we go to the final game of the season against Shardy. One of the biggest games, easily, for me personally, and I think for him as well. This kind of rivalry that we have. It's a friendly rivalry, and I love having that rivalry with him. He's a very good friend. But the situation was Thunderous Incarnate versus Manaphy, and I was really on the rocks at this point because Manaphy was at 2 good health. I had nothing left for it. He was EV'd to take any hit from a Life Orb, Thunderous. I was not Life Orbed, and I got a crit and took out the Manaphy, and that was fairly game-changing because it was dubious as to whether I could have taken that game if I didn't get that crit, and that was the game that won me the season. So that was a huge moment, massive amount of luck on my side. And, you know, that was another one where there is a tiny possibility that Victini could have clutched it. I don't think it would have happened, personally. I would have had to play out my skin with my last 2 mons to make that happen. But, yeah, that was a huge moment where luck really played into my favour. But without a shadow of a doubt, the main one was in the very first game against Slyro and the Pittsburgh Pyroar, whereby the situation was it was 5 against 2. I had Thunderous Incarnate at half health, and once again Scyther at full. And Sly had a Scarfed Donphan, who completely blindsided me in the game, which I was not expecting. He's locking himself in on Stone Edge, and it's against Thunderous. He outspeeds both of the rest of my mons left, and he missed a Stone Edge. And at that point I took him out and facilitated the late game sweep with Scyther, who ended up with 4 KOs. Now, that one Stone Edge miss turned the game from a 5-0 loss to a 1-0 win for me. And in that game, even then, there was a tiny, infinitesimally small chance that I could have still won. Because my Scyther speed tied with his with Slyro's Scarf Donphan, and the damage output that I could give was a really unfavourable roll for me. So there is just the smallest possible chance I still could have won. I don't think I would have. It would have been hugely unlikely. There would be so many factors affecting it. And that one really cost Sly. I have to take my hat off to the way Sly has played this season. Along with everyone who's been involved, by the way. The standard this season has been so very high. The league table will show you that. It's so close. You know, from 5th down to 10th. There's only a gap of 6 points. You've got 3 people on 18 points, 2 on 15, 1 on to 12, a couple on 21. I mean, I think there were still 4 teams in it by the last week who could still win. It was mental. The level, the level of skill. As I try and move my buttons around, just on the various spreadsheets. But yeah, it was of the highest possible caliber of battling this season. But I do want to shout out Sly here because he finished in 4th, And, you know, when he drafted, people didn't really take him seriously. He didn't have the greatest of first seasons. He had a decent first season. But you know, with his draft, people looked at it and go, that's not a very good draft. And he performed really well with it throughout the season. After what must have been a terrible loss for him, based mostly on luck against me, which I always only managed to beat him by way of hacks. One day I'll beat him legitimately, but it is not this day. But yeah, that's a game that he should have won. And it wasn't the only game he should have won. You know, he had a timer game against the Pittsburgh Pyro and RTK, and if he'd had just a couple more minutes, he'd have won that game too. And with both of those probably deserved wins, he'd have taken the title this season. He would have won. With a draft that people kind of snorted at and said, that's not a very good draft. But he's improved as a player so much, and he's used his draft incredibly well. And he had a very good season, deservedly so. You know, people have been improving. You know, Rye, by his own admission, you know, I think he didn't have as great a season as he would have wanted. But he played as well as he could with a draft that he didn't really want, you know. So I take my hat off to him for trying to sort of adapt to that as well as he could. And the other one I want to talk about is Jack. Jack has improved so much from being a little bit of a joke in Season 1. I mean that with no disrespect. People did like to sort of rip on him a little bit. And sort of say, oh, he's not very good. He's improved so much. You know, his time with the Battle Union, subbing in for them, has really made him so much of a better player. He's a genuine threat, and he's now so much of a better player than he used to be. And his win against me was hugely deserved. All his wins were very well deserved. He's improved massively as a player, and I take my hat off to him for that. But yeah, as I said, the standard this season was so high. Everyone put in a massive shift this season. Everyone played very well, for the most part, you know. And yeah, as I say, the fact that I could only get past a few of them with a nice amount of luck was testament to how well people were playing this season. And indeed, how close the season was is another testament on those lines. But yeah, that's pretty much my wrap up of the season. I want to send a thank you out to everyone who helped me this season. And that there are a few, too many to name, like people who have gened for me, people who have helped me with the team build, and I want to talk about that a little bit. We are a competitive league, the PPL. Of course we are. But we're a very friendly league. And in the chat that's on Skype, it would be weird not to see at least every week someone saying, you know, and not, I need massive help with this team. People who are just going to be saying like, oh, does anyone want to check out my team? Or can anyone help me with just a tiny bit of team building? And it's not a sense of someone completely helping someone craft an entire team. It will just be, for example, I'll pick a name out of a hat, Rye. Rye will say, oh, does anyone want to check out my team? And I'll say, yeah, sure, send it my way. And he'll send me a team, and he'll say, right, this is what I've got. I'm a bit concerned about how to deal with this mon. Or I'm a bit concerned about this mon set. And I might go, well, have you considered trying that? And he'll say either, yeah, it's not going to work, I've already done the counts, or, oh, no, that's quite good, I'll have a look into that. And that's the kind of level of help that we give each other. There's always a sense of people having a little bit of input, and I think that's very healthy. You know, it's not a case of, I'll use the same examples, Rye saying, oh, I can't build this team, and like Shardy building his entire team. Like that's not what happens. There'll just be a tiny bit of input, and I think that's good. I like that happens. And we did a lot of that with people in Division 2 as well. And this is where a couple more of my shout outs come in. I really want to have a huge thank you to Eric, Ash and Akai, and Kelly especially. Those two were very helpful for me, not in the sense of like crafting my teams, more in the sense of being there to help me practice. We had a good relationship, the three of us, this season, whereby we'd be saying like, oh, I need a practice battle. Can someone build an Alex team, or a Sly team, or an Evelyn team? And those two really helped me out in that respect, and I like to think I tried to help them out as well. This was not a team building exercise. This was more of just getting in practice, and a lot of people did that. You know, we do that for each other. If someone wants practice against someone else's team, someone will always be there to step in and like say, yeah, I'll build a team for you, have practice against that, and we'll just put together a team of what we think their opponent might bring. And that's another very healthy aspect of what we do. It's really good to have that kind of support. And, you know, Kelly and Eric were always there to help me out, among many others who were there. Everyone's always very helpful with that kind of thing. And, you know, they also really helped me out with genning. You know, Kelly especially, I'll pick up on him a little bit later. There were various people who were genning this season, and the amount of people who could gen, due to the sort of updates on various 3DSs, meant that genning became very difficult. So there were only a few of them left. You know, Sly was around to do some genning. You had Jack, of course. He's always there to help out with genning as well. I hope I'm not forgetting anyone here. But then down towards Division 2, you had Kelly, Eric, Chi, Amazing Chi. He helped me out with some genning as well. Very helpful when I was trying to get my Empoleons, because he also drafted Empoleon. But Kelly was the main guy who genned for me, and he was always there to gen. Even when he was laid up after an operation, he was like, yeah, he basically was like, I've got nothing better to do. Send me your teams, send me the QR codes, I'll gen them for you. Without any hesitation, he was always there. So to all of you guys, and especially to Kelly, thank you ever so much. You helped me out so much this season. And they're all gentlemen, and I look forward to playing against Kelly certainly next season as you got promoted, of course. So that's going to be a really good time. Unfortunately for that game, I have to find someone else to gen my mons and and help me out with practice battles. But you know, those guys and everyone as well has been very helpful, and the people who record my battles, of course. You know, I think Ethan recorded a couple for me. I think Sly might have as well. The main one there was Rai. Ryquin was huge for recording my battles for me. He was always there to help when he could. So Ryquin, mate, thank you so much for that. Very, very, very good of you to be doing that for me. Jack as well, he did a bit of recording too. And of course, RTK, he did one or two for me as well. So to all of those people, thank you so much for helping me out with those. And to everyone who made this season what it was, you know, all of the guys in Division 1 and 2, thank you so much for making it so special, and for the great battles we had. But of course, my final thank you has to be, as cheesy and cliched as this is going to sound, to you guys, my viewers and my friends, for watching my games and for supporting me throughout this season. Your support has meant so much to me that you guys would choose to get behind Parasect Germain, and it has. The support has really spurred me on. Everyone's always been there with supportive comments. It's been fantastic, and I try to reply to all of them, even if it's just saying thanks for your comment. You guys mean the world to me for your support, and I really, really and truly thank you so much for it, and I hope that you will continue to support us into next season. There is going to be a next season. It'll be sometime next year, of course, probably towards the first quarter of the year, towards the end of the first quarter, I should say, because there's a lot of admin to get done. And yeah, we'll be back next season for sure. What I do want to know, I have been considering, on the edges of my mind, a little bit of a rebrand. I love the Parasect Germain brand. I think it's great. I love the name, I love the badge, I love everything about it. I was considering moving it to a team closer to home, and I want to know what you guys think of that, because you guys are as much part of the team as anything. So let me know if you want to see Parasect Germain in Season 3, or if you want to see maybe a team a little bit closer to me, a little bit closer to home, a little bit more English, as it were. Let me know what you think. I'd be intrigued to hear your answers. But we're getting on for 40 minutes. Jesus, this is a long video, isn't it? But yeah, that's pretty much going to be my summation of the season. I didn't do a proper one last season, but I want to make this more of a thing after the PPL. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you all very much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed. Once again, thank you all so much for your support over the course of the season. It's meant the world to me, and I'm so happy to have you guys on board, supporting me and my team in the PPL. But as I say, I'm going to get out of here. So my final thank you to you all for watching. Keep supporting Parasect Germain, guys. As ever, we are always going for the top. But as I say, I'm going to wrap things up. So my final, promise it, thank you to you all for watching. And I guess with that, I'll see you next time. Laters.